We're here, as you know, to examine the implications of the Supreme Court's decision on Sackett versus Environmental Protection Agency for our nation's wetlands and streams. Our hearing is timely as today marks the 51st anniversary of the Clean Water Act. Susan's been here more than a few times, and so we know her. She's part of the family here, extended family here. We especially welcome you today, and Mr. Sullivan and to Ms. Rebels. Delighted that you could join us and for your contributions. While the Clean Water Act has been immensely successful at cleaning up our country's waters and slowing the loss of wetlands, the Sackett decision, in my view, has jeopardized nearly a half-century of progress under this bedrock environmental law. To understand the significance of this ruling, it's important for us to recall the state of our nation's waterways in the early 1970s. Before the Clean Water Act, our nation's waters were subject to indiscriminate pollution and destruction. Our waters were so polluted that the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland, Ohio, just north of where I went to college in Columbus, Ohio, but the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. And that was like the year after I graduated. I remember being I think I was on my way to Southeast Asia in the Navy. And I remember reading about the Cuyahoga River catching on fire. And I thought, oh my God. But that was a wake-up call, not just for me, but for a lot of people in our country and a lot of people who worked here in the House and the Senate. As a result, Congress got to work. And thanks to champions like Senator Ed Muskie, a Democrat from Maine, who many of us knew, and Senator Howard Baker, a Republican from Tennessee, who many of us knew and respected both of them enormously. But Congress enacted the Clean Water Act in 1972. And in doing so, they made a bipartisan commitment to protecting and restoring our nation's waterways. The law very clearly states that its objective is to restore and maintain the chemical, the physical, and biological integrity of our nation's waters. Today, the science is clear. We simply cannot achieve that goal without protecting wetlands and streams. That's because the health of our waterways and the health of our wetlands and streams are inextricably linked. I've practiced pronouncing inextricably for hours last night, so I wouldn't mess it up. That's okay. That's all right. Your phone's probably celebrating that I know how to pronounce that word. Well, unfortunately, the Supreme Court failed to recognize this link in May of this year when the conservative majority upended more than 4 decades of agency practice and precedent based on the original intent of the law. And while we don't yet know the full extent of the damage from the Sackett decision, scientists estimate that more than half of our nation's wetlands no longer have Clean Water Act protection. And this loss of federal protections could have disastrous consequences for our environment and our economy. Welcome, Ben. Why are wetlands so important? In addition to sequestering carbon, wetlands act as a natural sponge that traps, filters, and slowly releases water. They help provide us with clean drinking water and protect our property and infrastructure. In fact, wetlands can store more than 1 million gallons of floodwater per acre. Let me just say that. First time I heard that, I didn't believe it. Let me say that again. Wetlands can store more than 1 million gallons of floodwater per acre. That's pretty amazing. They provide an estimated $1.2 to $2.9 trillion in prevented national flood insurance program claims each year in our country. Why is that important? Because the National Flood Insurance Program is always running out of money, and the ability to actually save and preserve some money there in that fund is important. Removing protection for wetlands is especially short-sighted as climate change continues to fuel more extreme weather events, which we witness almost daily. In Delaware, we've seen firsthand how wetlands can mitigate flood risks. After Hurricane Sandy, a few years ago, we restored degraded wetlands in communities that had long flooded during storms. And since the completion of that restoration project, many of those communities, thank God, no longer flood. Wetlands also provide irreplaceable habitat for many wildlife species, especially birds and fish. And at a time when habitat loss is one of The factor is driving a global crisis of diversity loss. We should think long and hard before eliminating protections for more than half of our wetlands. The Sackett decision increased the burden of wetlands management for states. And currently, 25 states do not have laws in lieu of the Clean Water Act to protect their wetlands. And even in states with wetland protection laws, many regulators have said that they lack the capacity to issue permits for the wetlands and streams previously protected by federal agencies. Furthermore, watersheds span multiple states, which means that the actions in one state can often implicate neighboring states like Delaware and Maryland and Delaware and Pennsylvania, Delaware and New Jersey, and so forth. But even if states quickly expand their capacity to protect waters and wetlands, a patchwork of state laws would result in confusion and regulatory uncertainty. I talked with Susan a little bit about certain. One of my goals is like certainty and predictability, and hopefully, when all is said and done here, we can have more of that than we have right now. But if states are left to conserve wetlands by themselves, the objective of the Clean Water Act would be unfulfilled. What's more, wetlands are only one part of the impact of the Sackett decision. This ruling also likely means that more than a million miles of streams no longer have protection under the Clean Water Act. These streams provide over $15 trillion per year in ecosystem services, including protecting and filtering water supplies. Streams that only flow for part of the year are especially vulnerable because of the Supreme Court's decision in Sackett. These types of streams play a key role in mitigating drought and protecting water supplies for communities in the western United States, particularly for tribal nations. Many of those communities are now rightfully concerned about their ability to protect these streams without federal protection in place. Let me just close, if I could, by saying that the Sackett decision, in our view, ignores science and turned back the clock on protection for our wetlands and streams. This decision puts our health, it puts our environment and our economy, really, at risk. For more than 45 years, no less than 8 consecutive Democrat and Republican administrations interpreted the Clean Water Act protections to be broader than they are following the Sackett decision. The need to make our nation's waters safe for drinking, swimming, and fishing was obvious to Congress in the 1970s. Today, I believe the Supreme Court got it wrong, and with all due respect, in the Sackett decision. And I know that many, but by means all of our colleagues agree with that.